starting the recording. So yesterday we kind of introduced Node.js, which is server-side JavaScript for us. Can anyone just give us a summary of what is the difference between what we've been doing on the browser and what Node does for us? Go ahead, Gregory.
Nodes basically Node basically help us when we do JavaScript. We could do and Git Bash. We could implement whatever we script into the server.
Okay, yeah, that's a really good. That's a very good summation of the difference, right? All the JavaScript we've been learning to date has been JavaScript that is running in the browser, right? So the only thing it knows about the world is what the browser knows. So it knows about the HTML, it knows about the CSS, and it has a limited ability with XML HTTP request or with the fetch function to touch servers on the internet, right? And that still uses HTTP. So JavaScript in the browser, what we've been doing is completely client-side. Node lets us write JavaScript on a server or a computer or in a module. It lets us run it as if we were writing a different programming language altogether. So we will use it to write scripts that will let us interact with our web pages, because our web pages can submit information to us, and it will allow us to store things in a database and to do some heavier processing, so that our application can be used by a lot of people, right? A great example of this is we've been using local storage, right? Local storage is storage that is local to me. So if we're using an app that we built together, each person that uses the app is going to have their own local storage, and none of our data can talk to each other. Whereas if we use a centralized server powered by Node.js or any other technology, then Leah's records can be updated in a database, and then all of us can work together and collaborate, right? And Google Docs is a great example of this, right? Even here, right? Like, it's a presentation software. It lets me do. It's kind of like PowerPoint on the web, but we can collaborate on this. If I gave you guys the link to this, Leah could be in here updating content, and I would be able to see it on my screen. We are able to collaborate together by using a server to do that collaboration. Okay. Before we learn new things, I wanted to spend a little bit more time diving back into modules, because there's a whole bunch of complexity in here that is really interesting and important to learn and understand. Okay, so let me pull up some of our code from yesterday, right? Maybe we'll start fresh, actually. So, right, who can walk me through creating a node module? What is the best path to do this? Just tell me what to do, and I will follow your commands. Andrew.
You should create a Git repository or GitHub repository first.
Okay, let's go to GitHub. And why would I do that, Leah? Why would I create a GitHub repository?
Because when you're doing the init thingy in Node, it asks you for a GitHub link, so it'd be easier to just do it in GitHub first.
Perfect. Okay, that's one reason. Estrella, do you know the other reason that we want to use GitHub first?
So you can make a git ignore that ignores all the nodes.
So let's call this Node.js module. Okay, and I'll put in my first Node module. All right, public. We're going to add a README, a git ignore, and what are we going to select for our git ignore?
Node.
Yep. Yeah, I'm not going to put a license in here. That's fine. All right, so I'm up to here. Andrew, walk me through the next steps.
All right, so you're gonna go to your terminal, copy the code, and then go to your terminal. Yep.
Okay. And then I'm gonna go to a git bash terminal. Okay.
Go to git bash, and then whatever directory you want to create the new repository in. Go ahead and do the git clone and paste the.
What is that?
Yep.
What happened there?
Expected identifier.
Does anyone see
Is
why
there-
this is wrong?
Is there already a repository in there?
That's a good thought. What do you think, Estrella?
You already did npm init in there, so it's already working with.
No?
Oh.
What is the screen telling you a couple lines above where I said git clone?
Oh, you're inside the node already.
Yeah.
So you have to exit that first.
Okay, how do I exit it?
Dot exit.
Okay, good. Yeah, now I'm back to git bash. This is bash. What I was in before was node. So when I did git clone, right, like, that's not valid JavaScript. It's
But
easy to-
isn't first web server yesterday already a repository you made?
Yeah, so this is where we were working yesterday. So I need to. So Andrew, walk me through. How do I run my git clone? Where do I do that at?
So cd dot dot,
Okay.
and then now you can do git clone.
Just like that.
Yep.
Okay. Now what do I do?
Cd into, I didn't see what you named the repository, but cd into that.
It's right here.
Oh, cd node.js module.
Okay. Now what do I do?
And now you're going to npm init.
Nice. That's exactly right. It already got the package name for us because it knows the name of the folder. Yep, version 1.0 is fine. Hey, my first module. Neat. Yeah, entry point. Do we want to change this or do we want to leave this the same?
Just leave it.
Okay. We don't have a test command. There's our, to Leah's point. It already knows where we're coming from. I don't want to put any keywords in here. But if I was building a module, like if this was, what's the name of your golf app, Andrew?
Nothing creative right now. It's just golf app.
Okay, I'd maybe put in golf, golf app, right? Like all the words that someone might search my module if I was building, golf app API or something. Author, let's put in our name. Good. Yeah, license is good. Everything looks fine. Do I hit enter on this? Okay. And so now I have a module, right? And we can see we've got a package JSON now. What does package JSON tell us? What does this file do?
Doesn't that tell like if there's any like dependencies in it?
Yeah, it does. That's one of its main functions, right? If we look at Nano package JSON, right? We don't have any dependencies added yet. We haven't included new modules. But like all the stuff that we just put in npm init, right, is directly put in here, right? It's saying this is the name of the project. Here's the version. Here's that description we put in. Here's the main script. Okay. But you mentioned dependencies. Like if I was going to use I know I need a database in here. Like if I was to write code right now and say like I need to require MySQL, that module would not exist for us yet, right? What do I have to do to install them?
Just do the name of that module. So just MySQL install.
Like that?
Yeah.
What is that telling us?
Or npm MySQL install.
Oh, that gave us some kind of error. You're very close. So the usage is npm and then the command, where command is one of these words.
So I see install up there.
Yeah, it's right here.
Yeah.
Right? But it's saying the usage
npm
is,
install MySQL.
yeah. You just have the order backwards. npm, then the command,
Oh, okay.
then the package. And
And
I would be
then
willing to
do you-
bet if we ran npm install, right, it might tell us information. Okay, it doesn't. npm install help. Okay, yeah. So if you run npm install help, it's going to tell you, like, these are the things that you could do here, right? We can install, we've been installing from npm, like the website, the global repository, but we could also, have a zip file or a folder here and install that way as well, right? There's a whole bunch. Or we can install directly from GitHub. That's pretty cool. I didn't know it did that. Or from
I've got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I can't remember, what was the difference between doing npm install and then npm install with the flag save?
Okay, those are the same. So
Same thing.
npm install. Right. So if we look at package JSON right now, nano package JSON. Oh, dang it. You can see that it dependencies. It put in MySQL and then the current version. All right. If we had run, let's do npm uninstall, just so we can show this all. Uninstall MySQL. Okay, and if we look at package JSON right now you can see dependencies is empty. Okay, but if we do npm install MySQL save, it's the same thing. It's saying this is an important module, put it in my dependencies. Okay, the other one, we can just verify this, nano package JSON. Right. It looks exactly the same, right? The other one we looked at was npm install save-dev. Okay, and this does something a little bit different. What this does is it saves the dependency in its own specific format in package JSON, where it's putting it in dev dependencies. So there are some modules that you're only going to need to use while you're developing, and some modules that need to be put in for everything. Okay, so save dev will make sure that's available for your development environment. Go ahead, Andrew.
And then with the global flag, is that still, I know you said it saves it as a global dependency so you can use it for other projects. Is that still saved in this JSON package, or is it put into another spot?
When you do it globally, it's just, so this is a great example, is that oftentimes on my development computer, I'm going to have all the modules I use all the time saved globally so that I can use them from in here, in here, right? So if I'm in here and I'm like, I want to test a couple lines of code, running node by itself is our REPL, our read, evaluate, print loop, right? It's our program that is running behind the scenes. So I'm going to have it in here so that I could say, var MySQL equals require MySQL, right? And this should error because I don't think I've got it in. Oh, okay. Yeah, so we installed this locally. Well, let's pick a different one. Var Mongo, right? Require Mongo. Right? Module not found. If I'd installed this globally, I could run this on my computer and I could play with Mongo. I might not need it in this project, and so I might not pull this module in. But like behind the scenes, like all of these modules that we're installing in this package are going into this node modules folder, which is one of the big reasons why we are ignoring this folder on our git ignore, so that we don't upload all this code from the internet. We don't need that in our repository. Our repository just needs the package JSON, because if we have the package JSON, I can run npm install, and it's going to make sure that I get all these modules, that I'm ready to go.
So if you want to, how would you view, so if you have a bunch of global modules that you just keep around, that you use constantly, where would you view that? Would that be in your directory right there, in the node modules directory, or would that be...
If you type npm root -g, it's going to show you that this is your computer's node modules folder. And if we went here, copy cd, and not paste this in here, right? Gotta change all this around. C users me app data roaming npm node modules. Oh boy, that's messed up. Clear. Let's run npm, right? Cool. Right, so this gives us the path, and so you can pull this up in a, if you're on a Windows computer, right, it'll be a C based one. If you're on Mac, right, yours is going to have a different path. You can use Finder to get here, and you can paste in the link. But then it's going to show you a folder of all, like, so we installed Excel globally, right? So Excel is not in this current one, right? But if I'm in Node, I can do var e equals require Excel. Cannot find, what's that? Maybe it's because I'm inside this, yeah. Let's, node var e equals require Excel. I must not have a, let's see. It was there, right? We all saw it. Excel. It's installed. Yeah, there must be something, like we just installed Node here on the, I've never done this on Windows before, so there might be something that's broken here. What, maybe let's look this up. Why would I install a Node module globally? Oh, I mean, I might have some permissions error. Yeah. Yeah, so that's correct. Like, if you install it globally, every script on your computer could use it. It's just not working on mine. I'd probably have to troubleshoot it and figure out what, you know, it might be a permissions thing, or it might be, who knows. But that would be, like, a lot of these programming tools work really well on servers, like Linux, Unix, to some extent Mac, because Mac is Unix based. Almost all of these were built in those environments, and the Windows version is often less pleasant to work with because Windows does a bunch of things differently. You can even see, that's why we're in here with git bash instead of using the command prompt, right? Which is like Windows's terminal, right? And you'll notice that, like, when we're in here, like pwd, right? This is the Unix version of paths. It starts with a /. That's the root directory. But on Windows, they're just like, this is the C drive, right? So there are significant differences between the two different architectures. And you'll notice that a lot of these development tools were built with servers in mind. So they're going to be very Unix friendly, Unix and Linux specifically. Okay. So sometimes, things that should work easily on Windows do not, and you have to just jump through extra hoops. Cool. All right. So you, Andrew, did an excellent job getting us set up with getting our node module correct. Like, we have done, those are the 5 or 6 steps that is needed. That is like the easiest, most efficient way to like start a node module project. We're gonna take like a 15-minute break. When we come back, we're gonna actually spend a little bit of time building a node module ourselves. Right. All those other modules that we've been building, like that we've been using, Excel, MySQL, HTTP, Express. Someone wrote JavaScript and made that available to us on NPM using this exact same structure. And we're going to figure out how to write code. Previously, when we've been doing browser stuff, we would say, like, we're going to include script source equals whatever. And if we wanted to make a second JavaScript on our page, maybe we would add a second script. Node modules kind of operate on, not in the context of like, this is an individual script, but think of it as like, this is a module, right? So everything that we've done to create this module, you're going to be passing around and using modules using the require function. And so we're going to explore how to build that ourselves. Okay? So it is 5:53. Let's come back at 6:10. Good. Nice job, Andrew. Get back into it, shall we? All right. So yesterday we started playing with Node. And really understanding the power of modules, right? We started looking at NPM. We saw that it can, there's generally a module to let us do anything we want to do, and all we have to learn is, how do I do the thing that I need to do using that module, right? Some modules are really good. They're well supported. They've been in use for years and years and years. Like MySQL is a great example of this. And some modules are just made by some random dude on the internet, and they're bad, right? And how do we determine if it's good or bad? We had a few examples.
Like the version number.
Okay, what was that, Leah?
Like the version number.
Okay, this version is 2.18.1, so they've only had 2 versions. We think that's good or bad. Might be good, might be bad. I think the number that really stands out to me the most is how many people are using this weekly, right? Like, 700,000 people downloading MySQL on a weekly basis is probably a pretty good indicator that this is like a real repository. Also we can always go to the GitHub link, right? This is where the source code for this is actually stored.
Are you gonna share?
Yep, I sure am. Thank you.
I was waiting for someone to say it.
Why didn't you say it, Leah? You were talking.
I was wrong. I unmuted my mic like 5 times wanting to say it, but I didn't want to interrupt you.
She wanted to see how long it would take until you realized.
Oh, I would have never realized because I could see it on my screen. All right, cool. So yeah, the version here is 2.18, right? But there's 700,000 weekly downloads. Okay, and then I also clicked on. We can go to their GitHub repository and see like, okay, this is actually the MySQL database. This is their repository, and it has a bunch of contributors. It's being used by 431,000 people. Like this is legit. But then one of the ones we were looking at yesterday that was kind of wonky, right? Excel, right? This was not made by Microsoft, who you would expect to write the Excel module, right? Because Excel is a Microsoft product, and it only has 3,000 weekly downloads. It doesn't mean that this isn't an excellent module. We would just have to test it and see if it actually meets our needs, right? There's a bunch of really good modules that may only be used by like 5 people in the entire world, but it might do the exact thing we need it to do. The good news is, this one is licensed MIT, right? So if we just needed one function out of here, we could go here and find that one function. Excel, let's go to Excel parser.js, right? This is open source, and this is the beauty of open source, is that we can read the code and say like, oh, okay, well this is the function I need, right? And as long as we follow the terms of the licensing, which it will tell you, because it says, this is MIT license. It gives you, this is how we use someone else's open source. So MIT is permission is hereby granted free of charge to any person using this software to deal in the software without restriction, including copy, modify, merge, publish, distribute, sublicense. So we can take MIT license stuff, steal a couple snippets of source code, and all that we need to do is include a copy of this license file so that we know, hey, we took something from Trevor Dixon's software. Right? All we're doing is just maintaining a notice that he had that he originally wrote this. That's the only thing this license requires. But just get in the habit of checking, verifying, making sure this is good, right? Okay, so now we have been Andrew was gracious enough to walk us through creating a node module. So we made one called where's my thing here? Node.js module. This lives on our GitHub. Okay, so when we were in here, CBC 12 instructor Node.js module. Right? This is my module. Right now, there's nothing in it except, and because there's really nothing in it because we initialized this with npm, but we haven't checked in our package, right? So that's maybe step 1, right? So still here, I'm going to do git add dot, right? And we'll just do git status to make sure we're in the right spot. And we can see, yeah, we're adding package JSON and package lock.json. Great. So let's do git commit -m initial entry of node module, and then git push, and we're up and running, right? All the same stuff we've been doing this whole time. And now we can reload this page and see, indeed, there is a package JSON. Okay, so let's, yesterday we were exploring the open up Visual Studio Code. Right, I'm going to open up that folder, Node.js module. All right, so in our package JSON, we said, hey, the main program here is index.js, so we have to build that first, right? It's not a node module unless the code that is that we say it is actually is there, right? So that's the first step. I'll make index.js, and even though we have a node modules folder, we've told gitignore to ignore it. Okay, so what can we do in Node? Node is JavaScript. We looked at a few different things yesterday. We opened some files, we read some files, we played with timing, but anything that is valid JavaScript is valid for us to write in Node, right? So if I was to come in here and say, console.log hello world, okay, and if I do console.log, 10 plus 20, right, and if I run this node index.js, we see it does indeed print hello world and the number 30. I'm kind of following along. So generally, I mean, this is a great. We were looking at classes previously in our when we were doing this in the browser. A lot of node modules will be built as either objects or classes of objects, so that we can, when we're using MySQL, MySQL is an object that has a whole bunch of functions on it that we can use to make a connection, make a query to the database, and do interesting things. So let's maybe write our own class and pretend that we're trying to build a module that we can reuse in other projects, right? So let's start from here. All right. What is one way we know to make a class? Maybe we should take a step back. What is a class? Leah and Andrew raised their hands at the exact same time. Paper, rock, scissors for who gets to talk. What did Leah throw? Scissors? Okay. All right, Ty, let's go again. Scissors again. All right, keep going. Oh, Leah won. All right, Leah, what is a class?
A class is like it's like it's used to make new objects.
Yeah.
Like yeah, like you can like give it variables and methods that an object will have.
Yeah, exactly right. I don't know if this is a correct analogy or a way to describe it, but this is kind of how I picture it in my head. It's like a class is like the blueprints for a house we're building, right? Like it's telling us we're going to have these many rooms, 3 bathrooms, and it's going to be made out of brick, right? So all the things that let us build an object, and specifically an object in JavaScript, but this applies to all programming languages. When we create a new object or a new instance of an object, we use the new keyword to say, hey, give me a new whatever. Whatever is our class. It's, create me a new prototype of my, give me a new house, give me a new car, give me a whatever. Okay? So, what is one way we've learned to make an object, to make a class in JavaScript? There are 2 methods we've looked at.
You can just say class and then like a name and
Okay.
then curly braces.
What kind of class do we want to make here? Maybe we'll make a... Here, this is what we'll do. Since we've been playing with that API, that fake data API, which has like users and posts and all that, we'll make a fake API class. Okay, you like curly brackets. How do I, when I run, my object equals new class, what function is actually run when we use the new keyword? It has a specific type of name. Andrew, since you lost paper, rock, scissors, you have to tell me what the name of this function is.
So I'm not sure exactly what word I'm looking for, but so basically you need to list the arguments right there because every time you create the object, you're creating a new instance of it. So you need to be able to...
I don't know quite what you're saying.
I don't think I do either. What was the question again? Sorry.
What is the name of the function that is run when we create a new instance of a class? So when we say, we're doing fake API. If I say var API equals new fake API, there is a specific name for a function that runs that actually creates the object, that creates the instance.
Is it the prototype?
No, prototype is a good guess. JavaScript also has prototypes, but there is a specific name, and this name is used in every programming language. But it's also the name of the function that we have to put in here. Estrella, do you know? You didn't even play paper, rock, scissors. Starts with a C.
Nothing is coming to mind.
Okay. Leah?
Constructor.
Constructor. Yeah. Oh, I'm typing in the wrong window. I'm about to go to constructor on our Google Hangout. All right, constructor. And this is a function. So when we do var whatever equals new fake API, right? This function is actually what's running, right? So I can do console.log hello, right? And I think this will actually break because fake API doesn't exist yet. Let's move this down. So it says hello, right? Anything that's inside this function. Remember, functions are encapsulations of code that we can run later, and we run it by name. Right? So this is the same thing that's happening when we're creating a click event, an event listener. We're putting in a function and we're saying, when this event happens, call this function. And calling a function just says, execute every line of code in here. Do it line by line. Okay? So this is a constructor. We can pass arguments in this, like it's a function, right? So if I put in like name, if I put in Eric in here, and I say hello plus name, right? It will spit out hello Eric with no space in between because I didn't put a space in here. Okay? Any number of arguments. It also, just like with regular JavaScript, has the magic arguments variable, right? So even if there's no declaration in here, we can still pass arguments, right? Oh, this is going to break, right? Right? But we can do arguments. And if I run this, it's going to be an array of the values, right? So index 0 is Eric. So I could have done arguments 0, and it will say the word Eric. So regular JavaScript, this is just more of that. It's just running on our server. Okay, so that's our constructor. If we wanted to add more functions in here, right? Well, what else would we do with our constructor, right? So let's say we have arguments. I don't know. We'll just like name, right? If I wanted, what is one common use that we'll use the constructor of, right? I just passed in some kind of variable in here, but I want this instance, whatever, to have this name. What would I do in the constructor?
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, so we're passing in the word Eric, the string Eric. We have this as a variable up here in our constructor as one of our arguments, but one of the main uses of the constructor is that we're going to store versions of those variables to the object itself. How would we do that? Andrew.
This dot name equals name.
Yeah, perfect. This dot name equals name. So now, if we were to, let's do console.log. Console.log, whatever. Right? Now, whatever has a single property of name that is Eric, and we could have done, whatever dot name. And if we do that, it says Eric. Now, the cool thing about objects and classes specifically is that this is reusable behavior, right? So we have a fake a class here that stores a copy of the name, but I could come in here and say, var other student equals new fake API, and we'll call it Leah, right? And if I do console.log other student, let's take out this one. All right. So we're saying one instance of this object has a property of name Eric, and another instance of this property has a name Leah. Right? So classes are an excellent way for us to build some structure and some thought and some parameters around what it is we're trying to build. They let us encapsulate a bunch of logic and a bunch of data models that make it really easy to think about what we're trying to build. And we saw examples of this when we were building paper rock scissors game. When we were building, maybe that's what we'll do instead. It's that's a pretty easy one, right? Paper rock scissors. Cool. So that's a constructor. Now, if I wanted to have this is a class. What else goes into classes? Right, we know that we can put properties in here. which is just like a variable that exists in the object. What else would we generally put in
Methods.
in a class? Yeah, methods. And so a method is just what, a function? Yeah. And the class syntax for this is weird, right? Up until now, we've been learning that it's like function, name, right, like this. But with classes, all we have to do, because it just knows for whatever reason, we just put the name of the function. So we can be like get name. Okay. And then we can maybe do return this dot name. So now if we run this again, we'll see that, okay, this is interesting, right? Like in this version of JavaScript, when we're console logging, it's just showing you, hey, there's a fake API object. It has a name of Leah, or a name of Eric. When we've been doing this in the browser, we were able to like expand this and see, hey, there's a function in here. I can use this. We know that this function's here, and we could run this at any time. Like we can come in here and say dot get name, right? So this is going to console.log just the word Leah, which it does, but it's not showing us when we do console.log. It just shows us the properties. So that's something to be aware of in Node. Let's see what we know. Objects have keys, right? So let's just see what that does. Object.keys, and let's see what other student has here. Maybe it shows the. Maybe it shows it here. Okay, no. So it's just going to show us the properties, right? I would be willing to bet that these methods, just like with the other way we're going to take a look at, are probably stored as like a prototype. So they don't actually exist on the object. They're just in the object declaration, so that when we call that function, it knows to go and look for it, right? We could also probably come in here and say, like we could still write regular JavaScript. We could say like this dot secret message equals function. And we can have it say, something like console.log, haha, right? So that probably is doing it more, yeah. So now we can see secret message as a function is a property of fake API. Whereas when we write it like this is probably putting it in as the prototype. And, we could run, let's just run it. We'll say other student dot secret message, right? Which is going to run that function and log the word haha. So that works exactly as expected. So we have a whole bunch of different ways we can add functions to a class that then become available to our instance of that object. And instance is the variable that we actually have that single individual representation, right? So if I have a set of blueprints for a house and I want to go build a neighborhood, each address is different, and maybe the only thing that's different is the house color or the paint, or maybe they paid for the porch upgrade, or they got a swimming pool in the backyard. Right? That is the exact same model that I want you guys to keep in mind. Why we would use classes. Think of it as the blueprints. But the individual instance, when we use the word instance, that's the variable itself that has been called with the new keyword. Okay, so we made it this way, right? This is one way to write a class. What is the other way that we know to write a class? Let's do this out. Right? We're going to do the same thing, but with the other syntax. Andrew was writing his classes this way. Estrella, do you know?
Could you do function fake API and then write within it?
You want to do it the same way, like name, and we just do this dot name equals name, like that. Yeah, that is exactly. We're gonna have to take this out because we don't have the thing yet, right? But yeah, this is the traditional way that we wrote classes in JavaScript. This was the way for like 20 years. This new syntax is brand new. It's maybe cleaner, and it's going to be closer to what you'd see in other programming languages, but this was the original way. So you're going to see both. So any function can use the new keyword, because the new keyword doesn't care. It just says, I'm calling new on a function. And that function in this case is this constructor, and in this case is the main function itself, right? So we have fake API name, this.name equals name, and we can see that if we run this, it's going to do exactly the same thing, right? Fake API, name Eric, and then the second one, because we logged just object.keys, it's going to show us that there's name here. Now, if we're doing it this model, Andrew, how would we add a getName function here? You said it earlier. That's why I called on you.
Of course, I'm not gonna know how. You would just do. Is that when you use the prototype?
Yeah. And so every object in JavaScript has a magical property called prototype. So we do fake API.prototype, and then the name of the thing. So what do we have it as? Get name. And all that did was return this .name. So just like with when we were logging object.keys, right? Object.keys is still not going to say that getName exists in there, because it doesn't. It's hidden inside the prototype. But when we call, well, let's make a secret one as well, right? Fake API.prototype .secret message. And what do we do? Console.log. Right? So when we call, like, other student here as an instance of fake API, it's going to look and see, does it have a thing called secret message as a key? And the answer is no. But then it checks a second place, which is the prototype. And the answer there is yes. So it's going to say, oh, okay, use the prototype of this. So if we run this code, right, we'll say, oh, we have an error here. Oh. Excuse me, I wrote this wrong. Function. Right? Equals function. Perfect. That should be good. And so we'll see the exact same behavior we had before. So there's two ways to do this. The class way, which is new and is maybe a little bit cleaner, and this way, which is the old traditional JavaScript worked for 20 years using this model. They're both equally correct, and behind the scenes it's doing the same thing. This is just a different way to describe it, right? Like this is like British English and this is like American English. Right? We can still talk the same way, but these guys pronounce color differently, and they put U's in things. All right. Cool. All right, so let's go back to the class way. So we're building ourselves a class here. Great. I should have done the trick. Oh no, I broke it. Okay, cool. So we're back to where we were. We've got a constructor, and what is a constructor?
It's a way to use the class to assign functions to new objects.
Yep.
Or sorry, not functions.
Properties and values. And do stuff, right? This is a function. That's the important part. The constructor is always a function, and it will always let us write whatever code we want in here, right? I've seen some objects that have constructors that have 200 plus lines in them, where they're doing a bunch of crazy stuff, right? There is no limitation to what you can put in a constructor, but a constructor is special in that it is the name of the function that is called when we use the keyword new. Now, when we were looking at the other version, right? This one, function fake API. The constructor in this case is this main function. Right? So it doesn't have the name constructor, but if someone says, hey, write a constructor in JavaScript, they mean either write a function that you will use with the new keyword, like this, or they're gonna, if you're gonna use a class, then you're gonna have to put in a specially named constructor function. Cool. All right, so we got a constructor. We can see here, right? This is perfectly valid JavaScript. We're able to do this, okay? And if we check in our source code, let's take all this out, right? All right. So we've got ourselves a little fake API. It's a class. It is usable. Let's check in our source code here, right? We'll say implements first version of fake API. Let's wait to save first, right? Good. And when I push, right, now we see on GitHub, whenever it gets through, now index.js is here. And this is everything we would ever need if we were making ourselves our own module, with one exception, right? So there is no difference between this module that we just built and the modules we were using on NPM that do crazy stuff, like create a MySQL connection, with one exception. Like if we had this code in our computer and we wanted to use it in our project, you know, if we used require on this right now, right? Because we've also learned, let me pull up a console, right? If I do npm install -help, I type, you know, we don't even have to put our modules on npm. We can have our module be something that we just get on GitHub, right? So I could do npm install, you know, CBC 12 instructor / Node.js module, right? Just like this. So let's go into a new folder. Make your neat.js project, right? And if I was to run npm init here, right, this is going to turn this into an npm module. Like this is a node specific, right? Yes, good. Right, so we have a package JSON here. If I wanted to, I could do npm install CBC 12 instructor, what do we call it? Node.js module. And in theory, though I've never tried it like this, yeah, we have added, right, nano.exe. Oh, dang it. I always forget. No, cancel. Exit. No. Package JSON. Right. Oh, dang it. Stop it. We have this dependency in here. That module we just built is here. And so we could write code in here that says require, you know, this thing. Okay? But you'll notice that all the other modules you've been using have a very specific syntax. And if we pull up the one from out, you know, we would use it. I'm just going to write this here. We'd say like var, you know, whatever equals require, you know, Node.js module. The require function is something specific to Node that came out with Node, and it says, hey, load this module from the Node modules folder, and assign whatever it tells me to this variable. Right. So when we do MySQL, when we pull that in, that is actually saying, you know, there's a script in here that is creating an object and giving us that available. Right. It's the same with Express, same with HTTP. But what we need to do to make this, if we wanted to make fake API available to our project, we would need to use module.exports, and then we could say fake API. Module.exports. Whatever you put in here is going to be exported as the thing that is sent to, you know, on the other script, right? When we do var faker equals require fake API, right, like that. Faker would now have a class of fake API. So what you'll often do, if it's a class like this, is you'd say, you know, fake API equals fake API. Because then our code in the other folder that we're working in can use this class that we have built for it. It's like shortcut. Think of it as like, you know, when we're in the browser, we're writing a script tag and we're saying, hey, pull in this script file and then pull in this script file. All of those script files are brought in under the window object, so they're available globally. With Node.js, it tries to keep everything as separate as possible. But module.exports is the return of require on the other end. So if I do this now, right, and I right, get push, and I'll come in here and say exports the fake API script class. I'm going to push this up, so this will be on GitHub. What I have to do here, npm uninstall fake API. Okay, so now we can see that we go to node modules in this directory. I named it something else. npm uninstall node.js module. If we look now it's gone. Okay, I need to install this again because we haven't changed the version. So npm has no way of knowing this file has changed. So we're going to do this the manual way and say npm install, and we'll run that same command again. CBC 12 instructor / Node.js module, and it's going to reinstall it. But now it's going to have that that export for us, right? So if we went to right, we went to node modules, we can see that that folder is there. And if we go to the folder, right, we can see that it has all the information we have here. So I can run nano index.js, and we can see it is indeed giving us module that exports, right? So how we use this, if we were writing ourselves a bunch of reusable functionality, is we're inside our main, we're inside our main script. This is like our new project, and we're using this module that we wrote for ourselves. We would come in here and say nano index.js, right? We're going to say, and we'll say var fake API equals require fake API. Oh, what did we call it? Node.js module. And then we would say var student1 equals new fake API Leah. Var student2 equals new fake API Gregory. And then we can do all the same stuff we were doing before, right? Like console.log student1, console.log student2. Did we still have the secret message thing? Student2.secret message. Does that still exist in here? Yep. Okay. So if I run this file now, right? We've pulled in a module that we wrote for ourselves. It exists in our project. We can reuse this over and over and over again. And it's in a format that lets us write really cool, complex code and keep it constrained where we need it to be. Right? It's doing exactly the same thing that we were doing inside the previous thing when we were building it. Now we've built a module that we could share with the world theoretically, and if we wanted to, we could submit this to NPM and have neat, Node.js module available to the world, so that Andrew could use our fake API module if he wanted. Can you guys kind of see the power of how we can structure our projects using Node? Like, it's very easy for us to build and deploy new Node modules. And what you'll do pretty frequently when you're working in companies, you'll write a simple Node module to maybe update the weather, right? And so you'll have like a weather app, right? Weather, and it'll have maybe a zip code, right? And then it'll be get weather, and it will in here it would do something like fetch the weather info from weather.com. And so you would have this module. You're going to maybe use it on 10 different websites or 10 different projects. You write it once, and now you've got this functionality that you can embed in every project going forward, as long as you've structured it in a way that is useful. So whenever I'm thinking of is this something I'm going to do over and over and over again, it probably needs to be its own module. If it's something I'm doing that's specific to the single project I'm working on, then I'm probably just going to write it in the project, in this neat JS project folder. And we can still do stuff in here, right? Like I can have vi whatever.js. Let's just say var name equals Eric module exports equals name. Right? We can require. With require. We haven't seen this. This is another way that you can do require. It doesn't have to be a node module necessarily. We can do var. Var name. Var name equals require. And we can put in whatever.js. And so now name require is just going to load that script, run it, and if there is anything that is in module.exports, it's going to shove it out. And so we can run this here, and we can just make sure that we're working correctly. Let's say console.log. The name is plus name. Node index.js. The name is Eric. So oftentimes, if you're building something and you don't know if you want to jump through all the hoops to make it its own module, create it as a package, include it in GitHub, sometimes you will still need multiple things of scripts available to your project, so you can keep things kind of separate and clutter-free. You can still use require to pull in that script and run it and have those things available to you. often what I will do is I'm going to have each one of these scripts be its own individual class or set of functions. So then, like I'm going to build a project and I'm going to have a whole, it'll be like, I'll have vi, helpers.js, and maybe helpers will have like a function, get weather, zip code, and it'll just be a function that does this. And as I'm developing my project, I'll have required this file so that I get all those functions available to me. And if at some point in the future I'm like, man, I wrote a bunch of really good functions that do this, I'll come back and then turn this into its own separate standalone module that I can just create as a project and track it and do stuff like that forever. There's no right or wrong answer here. It's going to come down to what are you trying to do with what you want to do. But anything that we can do module exports, and we can do get weather equals get weather. So now that function will be exported. Go ahead, Andrew.
So is this essentially how different frameworks like libraries work?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Specifically in JavaScript, in Node, their library ecosystem is exactly this. Other programming languages like C++, they have a library system as well, but they use like include files and they have headers and stuff. It's a more complex system, and they usually don't. I mean, C++ for sure doesn't have a centralized repository where when you include a header file like a IO stream or something, it's not going to go search on the internet to find it. Like this is new modern stuff that people in the 70s and 80s would have dreamed about having. This is great stuff. Other programming languages like Perl was kind of the precursor to NPM because they had the kind of the first mainstream like module system just like this called CPAN, CPAN, and it functioned almost identically to NPM in that like people would write some Perl scripts, package it up in a file, and then put it on cpan.org, and then when you're writing Perl, if you were like I need to get the weather from the weather.com, there was probably a Perl module for that already. And so that was really the precursor to this. Lots of other languages and environments have similar things to NPM, but Nodes is particularly good. But there's also nothing stopping you from, we could come into GitHub and we might find some code in here that we're like, oh, that's good. If you see a package.json, this might be a Node module that you can just copy this code and npm install directly from here without bringing npm into the mix. And what you might do in your careers and your day jobs, you might be working on Node modules that are specific to the clients and the projects you're working on. Those might be private repositories. So you're not going to publish them for the world, but you need them in your team. And so you'll still follow a similar type of process, but like a private repository on GitHub, nobody can access except the people on your team. And so you'll do a bunch of things like your server will have to have access to that repository so that your server can install those modules and things like that. And we'll get into that, I think, in 2 weeks when we start talking about deployments. Cool. Any questions with module.exports? We didn't cover it yesterday because really all of this code stands on its own. Right? There's nothing in even if we built this to be a module that we want to like let it export, everything in here is JavaScript. So we can. The best practice is that like if you're trying to make this be a module that you want other people to use in their other programs, like we were doing with our Neat.js project, for example, right? Where we're saying, hey, we want you to use this. We want you to treat this like a library. The best practice here is that like, right? If I say var fake API equals require node modules, this should be the end of the transaction, right? If instead, when we do require, it's doing a bunch of stuff like logging stuff to consoles and causing output, then this is no longer a safe thing for us to use as a library. Now, you might need to, that might be a part of your project. You might have to, if we wrote in here something like console.log module is loading, right? We would not want that output to happen just from using require, but if you had to, you could. There's nothing stopping you, but best practice is like when you do a require, just give me the stuff so that I can use it. in here. Any questions? All right. Let's continue building our fake API module, and then we can also use that as an example of like what do the version numbers mean. All right, cool. So we have we added this information in here. Let's just test this. I've never done this not on npm. Let's go into package.json and let's just say this is version 1.1 now. Okay, and we'll do the plus. We'll say like updated version and logged a message. Right. Let's run this. Get pushed. Okay. There's another npm function, right? So we've got our project neat.js project. It is using a module that we installed, and we can see that in package.json, right? We're saying, hey, the dependency here is this Node.js module. Okay. What if we wanted to update this Node.js module, right? We've learned that we can uninstall, we can reinstall if we need to get those changes in here. I don't know if this will work with that, but let's try it. So we've added some new code. Right, we see now that modules loading has been added, and we also updated the package, the version number here. Right now this is 1.1. So let's do npm update and see what happens. Okay, and so yeah, this works perfectly, right? So npm also gives us the ability to run npm update and update all the modules, right? So it's going to do whatever, if you guys remember yesterday when we were looking at MySQL, and we said, npm install MySQL, right? This is putting it in the package. If we look at that real quick, package.json, right? It's saying, for MySQL, make sure we're at least version 2.18. If we were to come in here and just say, MySQL, give me whatever version, or in this example where we're doing this where we don't tell a version, it's saying always keep us up to date. Whereas with MySQL, it's going to try to stick to 2 point whatever. So it won't ever update to 3 without telling us. But when we made this change, npm update is smart enough to go to this location and say, hey, show me your package.json file and tell me if the version I have is the version that you have. And it isn't anymore, right? We've changed this to version 1.1. So now npm update, when we ran it, let's get out of here. It's telling us, hey, well, it's giving us a couple warnings. There's no description in the package JSON. There's no repository field in the package JSON. But it did tell us, it did tell us here that it updated to 1.1. It says it updated one package and audited one package in 2.7 seconds. And that it found 0 vulnerabilities. So now if we go into our node modules folder, cd node modules, and we look at this, where is it at? Node, cd node.js module. Yeah. pi index.js. Now we can see that our code has been updated, right? So we can use this to distribute applications and npm for free, for us not having to do any extra legwork or lifting, has given us a mechanism just by letting us run npm update to like pull down the latest versions all the time. It's extremely powerful, especially when we get to deployment and we get to servers and stuff. Almost all the time, you're just going to come in and run npm update, and you'll be like, oh, all these programs have updated for me. I don't have to worry about it. And most of the times, the updates are going to be little things, bug fixes, especially when you're using some of the bigger packages. It'll be things like, we had a function that didn't parameterize a query. That was a possible security vulnerability. We fixed it. And so it's going to be something that doesn't change your code at all, but has kept your program from being insecure. But in general, npm update is just looking at all the dependencies and saying, is this the most recent version? Can I update? And if so, do so. Go ahead, Gregory.
Can the update break your code?
Absolutely. There is an extremely famous story in the early days of Node being a new language environment. Everybody was extremely excited for npm, and there was a program that everybody was using called leftpad. And let's look at this and see if it still exists. it was something that you can do in literally one line of JavaScript. This might not be the right one, but let's just look at the code and see if we can. Right, index.js, right? This is more complicated, but it was literally just saying, like, if there's any extra white space, like, if I got a string that's 5 letters long, this will let me add 5 extra white space characters to the left of that string, right? So it's, let me pull up a console and I'll show you, right? Like, it was literally doing, like, var name equals Eric. You know, what left pad was doing was just a simple function that said, like, left pad, like, let's write our own implementation real quick. Function, left pad, you know, string, str, and we'll say, like, num characters. Right? It would return, you know, like, num characters minus string dot length. Okay. So however long the string was, right? If I put an Eric and I said this was 10, it's gonna say I need to have 7 characters of white space. So it'd be like, we can do this in like a loop or something. But it would just basically return like, you know, like space plus Eric, right? So something that you can do in like 2 or 3 lines of code, and it was called left pad. So when npm first opened up, they were like, oh, this is the gold rush. I can make a module that everybody needs and everybody wants to use. So in the early days, there were a lot of modules that were just like, you know, loop through an array, or you know, console.log an object and have it like look nice. Lots of like real simple things. There's one called left pad, and it turns out that like it had been used in hundreds and hundreds of modules, because we've seen that when we like we installed MySQL, right? Right. We installed MySQL, and MySQL requires string buffer, you know, safe buffers, SQL string, string decoder, readable string. There's a whole bunch of modules that the module we installed requires, and each of those, right? If we go into like let's go into like SQL string, for example, right? This is just a folder, and it, oh, that's a bad example. Let's go to isArray. Oh, isArray is a perfect example. isArray. It's using isArray for some reason. Okay. Vi index.js, right? This module is literally, you know, one line of code, which is saying, is this an array? What, we could do this ourselves. There is nothing stopping us from doing this. But for whatever reason, MySQL is like, I'm going to use this node module as array. So left pad was exactly like that. It was like a very simple one-line thing. But so many projects, because it was new, were using that module to do something they could have done themselves. And then thousands and thousands of programs were using this. And then the guy that wrote it went into NPM, because NPM is community contributions, right? Like everything in here is written by somebody that has donated their time and energy to be like, I'm going to make something for open source. And this person said, I don't like Node anymore, and deleted his repository. And so, you know, there's a whole bunch of systems, including like, you know, big players, GitHub, Spotify, any company using Node or using modules had a module that used left pad somewhere in their architecture. And it happened on like a Saturday night or a Sunday. You know, a lot of these servers were set to be like, you know, we're going to run npm update at the start of the day. We're going to make sure everything works. And all of a sudden, everything broke, because it wasn't your code that was wrong. It was MySQL that stopped working. You couldn't make a database connection because MySQL used left pad in this one spot. So there was like, the internet died for an entire day because someone deleted a node module. They have since made it so that that can't happen as frequently, but it's still possible, right? If you're using MySQL and something, you know, they change the way the connections work, right? And you choose to update to that version, your code could break. So it's just something to be aware of. It's not as frequent anymore, but it can happen. That's the left pad. I'll send you guys. It's like left pad breaks the internet. It's like a hilarious, yeah. This article will crack you guys up. You should definitely read it, because that's, you know, we are programmers. We are going to do things that break code. You're going to break servers. These are all learning experiences. So at the time, like, Node was pretty new, but a lot of companies liked it, and one dude we didn't think of. Hey, left pad will get deleted someday. So, here's the line of code, right? So it's got a string, then we subtract one from it, and then he loops through the string, adding extra white space to the left, right? Like the simplest. This saves us 8 lines of code. We could have done this ourselves. So, yeah, good question. All right, so that is node modules. You want to keep building on our fake API? I think that'd be a fun experiment. Or maybe we build one of our other, like paper, rock, scissors game or something like that. What do you guys want to do? I'm not going to pick for you. How about this? It's 7:03. Now it's a pretty good time for a break. Let's come back at 7:18, and when we come back, have an opinion on what we should do next. Because we can either keep building the fake API, we can build a weather API. Like I think we really need to spend some time playing with modules because this is going to be really important. I don't want to move on to other things yet. 7:18, see you back. Have we decided on break what we're going to continue doing? Has anyone got any opinions?
Can we? Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say the weather app that we were working on earlier, since CSS is already made for it.
Ooh, the weather app. Okay. What are you going to say, Gregory?
I was just about to suggest, can we play with more other tools and no, I cannot pronounce it. It's just, yeah.
You mean like other modules?
Yeah, other tools or other modules.
Yeah. I think we can do that with any of the suggestions.
Okay.
Yeah, because we're gonna want to use Node to its fullest extent by using existing modules. So we had one vote for weather app. Does anyone have any other votes? Okay.
I like the weather app idea.
Weather app? Okay, so let's refresh ourselves on where we were with the weather app. I'm going to open that folder as well. So let's, new window. Oops, cancel. Open folder, CBC 12. Got weather. Alright, let's just see where we left off here. Open with live server. Okay, we made a thing named drizzle. So we need to be able to, knowing that we're going to want to make a module for this, we're going to want to have a server. Let's create a module and see if we can give us some mechanism to capture the current temperature and the current location and, kind of like this maybe 1% chance of rain thing. So if I was building this myself, right, we know we need to get this data source from some authenticated location, right? Weather.com or the NOAA, right? Like the National Institute of Oceanic, whatever. They're going to have those are the people that run the radar stations. They're the ones that have a nationwide network of, thermometers and stuff so that we can query them. But we know we're going to write this in Node, so your first reaction should always be, let's go see what's on NPM. And maybe we'll just start by typing in weather. An easy way to fetch the weather. That looks interesting. Let's open this up. And then open weather APIs. That also sounds interesting. And then weather.js. Let's just kind of take a look at these modules and see if any of them maybe give us the information we're looking for. All right. So we're going to need a here.com app ID and a here.com app code. This is kind of one of the main problems with some of these node modules, especially like weather.com or some of these places. Even if they have an API, we're going to have to go and register as an app so that we can get a token that will let us connect to their system. So that's something we'll have to keep in mind. But this one looks pretty easy. Kind of shows off that you say, hey, the weather is this. We pass in an app ID and an app code. And then we say, what is the weather now in Brisbane, Australia? Okay, let's take a look at this one. Okay, so this one is the same kind of thing, right? We need an app ID from here. Okay, same kind of thing. Open weather APIs. We're gonna set our language, right? We're probably gonna put English instead of Italian. We set our city, or we can do it by coordinates or by zip code, right? So this one is interesting, right? Because I know my zip code, and we can also, knowing that we can in our browser get our current coordinates, right? We learned how to do that last week. So this API looks really interesting. Okay, so it's telling us that we need to get an API key, and we do that at this address, and it also gave us a link to. It's probably the same. All right, so we're gonna have to get this first. So let's get that. Before we start diving in, I think I want to use Open Weather. Let's just take a look at Weather.js. Does this require any kind of? Oh, interesting. This one doesn't seem to require any special app IDs. Let's play with this. Let's see if this works or is interesting. So maybe what we'll do is we'll just experiment real quick, and we'll just go up to our CBC 12 folder, and maybe what we'll do is we'll say Mictor. What do we call our app? Drizzle. DRZZL. All right. So to me, like the best possible name for this would be like because we're gonna make a module that will let us fetch the weather that we can then consume on our website. Right, so I'm gonna maybe go drizzle weather. Right, that's gonna be the name of our module, and we're gonna have that as the name of our class as well. So let's just go into drizzle weather, and real quick we'll say npm init. Drizzle weather version 1 description class definition of the drizzle weather app for fetching current climate info. Right? Good. Index.js, no test command. We haven't made a Git repository yet because right now I'm prototyping. So remember we told you yesterday, always start from GitHub. We don't have to start from GitHub. We can just create a module and start playing around. We can always get that extra stuff later, right? And we'll show you how to do that as well in case you ever work this way to the other way, right? No keywords, and we'll say, hey, this is written by me. Good. License. Good. Cool. So we're a node module now. What I want to do is I want to play with this API, and I want to play with this API. This one is going to make me go and register and get an app ID, but it has a really nice, clean implementation. This one has some kind of search thing, but it doesn't seem to require any kind of code. So let's try that one first. That one might save us a bunch of time. So we will just do npm install weather.js. Should go and grab it. Cool. It added 51 packages, right? So now we've got a whole bunch of node modules here, but we have the ability to write weather. So let's just test this real quick. Node, and we'll say let's test his code. Var weather equals require weather.js. Okay. And then we can say weather.find, and we'll say search Thompson, Georgia. Degree type is F. Right? And what is okay? So then we have a callback function that does console.log JSON stringify. Right? So we'll just do that. So I'll do function. Error and result are the two things. Error result. And we'll say console.log JSON.stringify result null 2. Right? Oh, cool. So this weather API, I guess it's using weather.service.msn.com. Works without us needing to get an API key. So I don't have to sign up for anything to use this one. We'll probably use this one. Cool. So let's run this again. But let's see if we can do latitude and longitude. What do we have here? It gave us the latitude and longitude. So 33,466. Let's just try 33.466, comma -82503. -82503. And we need a callback, so we'll just do ES6 format. We'll just do error result. And we'll just do console.log json.stringify. json.stringify result null 2. Okay. I'm missing. Yeah, I'm missing one. Cool. Did that give us Thompson? Yeah, perfect. So this weather package, weather.js, right? Even though it has 8,160 downloads a week, and this one, okay, is even less. But like, this one's a really cool looking one. We'll probably want to keep this in mind because it's got like the functions that it gives us are more powerful maybe than the functions that this gives us, where it's just giving us a .find method. And this one lets us set a city, set a zip code, check for weather in a bunch of different ways. And it also has like things get temperature, get pressure. Like, that's awesome. But we can probably use this weather API because it's giving us this JSON back. Maybe we can implement some of what this one is doing, but by using this module. Okay? So this is cool. I'm going to use this. So, all right, we've got our drizzle thing up. All right, so we definitely need temperature. We definitely need location, like city name. And we need, what else do we get in here? Current. Forecast. All right. Let me just do like a clear. Cool. So we got some of that stuff in there. So let's we're right where we want to be. Let's create a module with this. All right. So what do we want? We already built a new folder. So let's use that. What do we call it? Drizzle weather. Right. This is our node module. So let's select the folder. So we have it open here, right? We've got a node modules folder. Now that's a problem because we don't have a Git anymore, right? So let's go make a GitHub repo right now. GitHub. And we are going to want to, I think it's good practice. Like, we made a mistake when we were playing with Node.js module because we made our class name fake API, right? I think it's a good idea to always have your names match in both places. So let's call this drizzle weather. And we'll say this is a drizzle weather is a node module that the drizzle web app uses to fetch the current weather data. Okay, cool. We'll put in a get ignore. We'll choose node. Okay, great. So we're creating a repository. But remember, we already have this npm folder, right? So rather than right, this has a get ignore file in here. That's what we actually care about. But we have a bunch of files in here. So let's see if we can make this work. Let's exit out of here. Okay. So we're in our folder. Let's do get init, get remote add origin, and we'll put in our remote. This is GitHub's address. And we'll just first do get pull. Get, it's telling us what to do. Get pull origin main. Okay, so now we can see that we have our get ignore that we got from GitHub. So we're right up to where we're supposed to be. We just went the backwards way. But now if we do get status, right, we're not tracking our package JSON where we have we've already installed the cool weather.js module that we want to use. So that's step one. So let's do get add dot get commit dash m includes weather.js in package JSON. Okay, good. And we'll do git push. Git push origin main. Cool. So now we're all caught up. We're exactly where we would have been if we'd gone the other direction first. So it's not impossible to work either way. I just find it generally easier when I know what I'm building to start in GitHub, because I don't have to jump through all these extra hoops. But either way is fine. Okay, so we're here. We know we need to, right? We're caught up. We know we need index.js. That's the name of our file that we put in package.json. It's saying, the main is this. Oh, cool. Oh, neat. Our browser's trying to run test scripts. Cool. Get bash. Cool. I don't like that. All right. So we got index.js. So let's use the same process we've been using up until now to build software, right? So we know we need a class, and we're going to call it drizzle weather. We know we need a constructor. And we probably want the constructor to be like, some address, right? Whether coordinates or a city name, we probably want to do it like this, most likely. So we'll say, constructor creates our object and takes an address lat long as its main. This is getting long. As its main argument. Right? And so in here, right, we want to if an address is provided, query weather.js for current weather data. Okay. So that's really that's it, right? We know that drizzle weather. We've already installed the module here, so this file can use it, right? So we would use it by saying, const weather equals require weather.js. So now it's available, and if we recall from the code here, it's showing us how to do it, right? So we don't have to. This is not an object. It's just it is already an object itself. We don't have to run new on this. So it is already weather.find. So let's just refresh ourselves. Maybe we'll put an example code here so we can. So that we know what it looks like without having to switch back to our tab a bunch of times. Right? Okay, cool. So this is what we need to do, right? So the first thing that kind of jumps to mind is, because we're still in development mode, I don't need this to be a great package yet. I can still play with it on my local computer. So let's just start with this, right? We already created the weather object. We're good. So let's say when we call a constructor, let's just see if passing it to weather.find is interesting. Weather.find, and we'll say search is some address. So we're just going to literally pass in whatever we pass into this constructor into weather.find. And then we also need to say degree type is f. Okay? And then it also takes a second argument, which is a function air result. This is the callback, right? Because this is asynchronous, right? So we're going to create an object. We're going to pass in an address. Behind the scenes, JavaScript is going to go off and actually get the weather results. It might take 1 second. It might take 30 seconds. But when it comes back, we want to be able to use it. All right, so let's see weather.find. And we'll say if error. Right, if there's an error passed in, we'll just log it, console.log error. And otherwise, we'll say console.log json.stringify result null 2. Cool. All right. So we have a class here. We've created with a constructor that takes an address, and then we'll run the weather thing and log it to the console. So the exact same thing we were doing in the node terminal earlier. Let's just verify that this works by coming in here and saying, var d equals new drizzle weather, right? And we'll put in Thompson, Georgia. Right? So we should expect that if we run this code, we're going to get to the JSON is going to populate, and then we're going to see a bunch of weather data just like we did before, right? And we did. Everything's working. This is great. Okay, so how we're probably going to use this in our future program, now it's time to think about that, right? So we know that we created this object with information. All right, we've created this class. So if we're going to make this as a module, we need to export it. So let's just do module.exports, and we'll say drizzle weather. All right, so now if we use this module in a different script, it will be available for it, right, through the require function. Okay, so we're getting this. We don't want it to log to the console. That seems like that's the wrong approach. But what we probably want to do is we want to have some property that stores the JSON information, and then we probably want to have a few. Let's make these as methods, right? We probably want to have a. So that's the constructor. We're going to want a method to get the current temperature. Method to get the what did we have in our app? Let's see, the current location, city name. Method to get what did they call this in their example? The sky text, whatever sky text means. Get sky text, and then we'll want a method. Right, we also had like a 1% chance of rain. Did they have one of those in here? Oh, precip. Yep, so that's like a percentage of precipitation. Forecast. Let's take a look at our current data object. Excuse me. Let's see what it's currently providing for us, because this is like from 2017. That's super old. So let's look here. Right, we've got already output here. All right, so we've got sky text of today is sunny. The current temperature is 87 outside. Humidity. What's today's date? The 29th? So that was yesterday. That's today. Tuesday. Has a 100% chance of precipitation today. Is it supposed to rain today? So if we want to get the precipitation, right, we need to know what today's date is. We can get that in JavaScript. So we're probably going to want to have when we write our method to get precipitation chance, and we'll maybe give ourselves a note. We'll say current date, year, month, day, right? So whatever method we choose here to get the precipitation chance, because when we create this object and we pass in an address, it's going to store this information in here, and we've got an array of dates with, we need to come down and find what is today's date and what is our precipitation chance. So that's kind of the thought there. So if we do these 4 methods and we have a property to store this JSON information, then our drizzle weather product will let us work with this correctly. So let's do that. Right. So right now we're console.logging. We don't want to do that, right? We want to do right. The result is probably already a JSON object because JSON stringified turns it into a string. So result is already a JSON object. That's useful to know. So let's just come in here and start testing this, and we'll say, right, this dot weather data equals result. Okay, this is going to cause us a problem, and the problem is this function does not know what this is. Does anyone remember how we change the this to be the this? There's a special function we can attach on a function. And let's just let's test this out. So let's come in here and say this dot weather data equals empty object, right? And so now if we run this same script again, it should give us an error, or at least it won't. I mean, if we let's come down here. Let's say console.log d.weather data, right? So we're going to try and log out that data when it exists. Let's put it up in here. How can I show this off? 'Cause this is asynchronous, right? Interesting. So this is an interesting problem, right? We're going to get this data, and the data is going to return slowly. So if we're writing this code, we're going to have to either put this in callbacks ourselves to make sure that we wait until the code is available, or we're going to have to convert all this into promises or callbacks, right? Because this information doesn't exist yet, right? Or potentially could not exist yet. Like if we ran this code and we said console.log, here, let's just do this. I like it. Yeah, weather data, that's fine. So, right, if we do console.log d.weather data, this is not going to exist because the request, so there's a couple problems, right? Cannot set property weather data of undefined, because inside this function, this is what I was talking about, is this, in this context, relates to this function. It does not relate to our class. So we need to somehow tell this function that it belongs in the scope of our class. Does anyone remember how to do that? We briefly touched on it as a few examples. No? I'll refresh your memory. We're going to use bind. Bind this. So outside of this function, this means our drizzle object. So if we use bind, it's basically saying, hey, tell this function that it belongs to this class. So now this in here should work. So if we run this, we hopefully won't get our crazy error. But we see the problem here, right? So index.js, when we log our weather data, right? When we log it here, this line of code is running before this is finished fetching that information. If we were to load this into Node, right? Node, and we do like var d equals, we have to var d equals require index.js, right? Let's do it like this. Cool. So D is our drizzle class, so I can say var instance equals new D, and we put in Thompson, Georgia. Right? Instance is our instance, and so we can look at weather data now and see that it is all there. But when we're writing code for this, it might not exist yet because it's asynchronous. So we're going to have to figure that part out. But maybe we'll just come back to that at a later time. Let's keep writing because I think we're on to something pretty good here. So let's assume, okay, so we've shoved the information into weather data, and we're doing that in here in the callback, and we're able to do this .weather data because we've used bind and bound the class itself to this, right? So all of that JSON data now exists in the drizzle weather instance that we create as soon as it's available. And so we'll have to, let's take a note here, and we'll say, to do is, let's make sure we can do this asynchronously, async, right? Either with promises or callbacks, right? We'll probably also, like, we've got this error here, right? If there's an error in fetching the weather, we probably need to tell our class that there's an error so that, like, all these other methods we write don't try to do something. So let's just do that as well. So let's make a property to let us know if our weather fetch failed or had error. We'll just do this dot error equals false. So if it's got an error in there, we're good. But we'll have error be false by default, and so we'll come in here and say this dot error equals error. Right? So if there's something in there, we'll know about it. I mean, what are some ways? Like if I did, let's try and put in like some junk like an address that doesn't exist. Instance dot get weather data or weather data. Okay, it didn't throw an error. That's interesting. So yeah, I don't know what would cause an error. Maybe if it couldn't communicate with the server for some reason, we'd have to like play with the weather.js module to figure out what it considers an error and what it doesn't. But that's just something to be aware of. So, all right, we've got an error trapper. We've got our weather data object that may or may not exist because we haven't figured out asynchronous. But let's just write a few methods, right? So let's say maybe we'll just say temp, and we know that. All right, so let's look at this. Array index 0 is this object, and then the first thing is the location, which tells us information here. So if we did, maybe what we do is result 0. So instead of storing this as an array, we're storing it as an object. And then we'll say, all right, so then it has location and current, right? So let's check this and make sure that we're working correctly. Node, all right, we'll do exit. Let's start it back up, and we'll do var drizzle equals require drizzle index.js. Okay, and then we'll do var d equals new drizzle, and we'll say Thompson, Georgia. We'll do d weather data. All right, so now it's better. We've made it not an array, and it's ready to go. So we could do d weather data current temperature is going to give us our current temperature in Fahrenheit. So that's perfect. So we'll do return this dot weather data dot current dot temperature. Everyone following along? We have an object. We went and fetched it using this weather thing. And now we have a function called temp that will return this weather data. So we can just, let's exit and try again. Let's make sure this works. Node var drizzle equals require drizzle index.js. I'll say drizzle var d equals new drizzle. Oh, what is it? Drizzle weather Thompson, Georgia. Oh, we called it drizzle. Var d equals new drizzle Thompson, Georgia. Okay, and we'll say d dot temp 86. Cool, we made it work. We're like 90% of the way there. All right, current city name, that was in here as well. All right, let's just look at our object, and we'll say weather data. All right, location name. So let's just say city. Return this dot weather data dot location dot name. Sky text, whatever the heck that means. Sunny. So we'll just call it sky text. Return this dot weather data dot current dot sky text. Okay, and what was the last thing? Precipitation chance. So this one's going to be a little bit more complicated. Who wants to walk me through writing this one? So if I wanted to get precip, right, we know we need to pass a date in, so we'll say date, and it's going to be in like this format: year, month, day. This is what the data object looks like, and it's in the forecast array. If I want to get this precip value out of one of these days in here, right, because it looks like it starts of the week, right? So this is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Oh, it just gives us 5 days. That's weird. I wonder what it does on Saturday or Sunday. It might break. We'll have to test it on the weekend. So I need to write a function that will give me information out of the forecast array. This weather data dot forecast, which is an array. So how do if I pass in a date, how do I get that precipitation? Forecast, and then it's dot precip. But I have to know which one of these to. Go ahead, Andrew.
You could do if date equals and then you can use the window date object, like current date. I'm forgetting the syntax for it. But...
No, so we have to look in the forecast array. So this is an array of all the days of the week. We have to find which day we are in first.
Oh, okay.
So we're probably going to need a loop, right?
Okay.
So maybe let's start with a loop. Who wants to walk me through writing a loop? Estrella knows how to write loops. Estrella, what kind of loop should I use?
Could you use a for loop and have forecast.length for it?
Forecast.length as like our thing?
So like it would be like I equals 0 and then
So you let
I
I
is
equal
less.
0. I is less than
Forecast.length.
Forecast.length. Okay, you're close. The problem is this is in this.weather data. So we have to do this.weather data .forecast.length. And then I plus plus.
Yeah.
Okay, you're exactly 100% right. Now, I don't like writing things this long, so I probably would, just for the sake of my own sanity, be like, let r length equals, right, and paste that in. And then replace this with r len, just because I don't want a crazy long line of code in my for loop. Oh, but that's just preference. If I'm going to use a variable like this array is inside weather data inside this, so I don't want it in here. Okay, so now back to Andrew, though he turned his camera off, maybe he's not there anymore. We've got a date field. If the date matches this date that we passed in, we want to get the precipitation thing, right? So what would I write next? If the date I pass in matches this, how would I write that as an if statement? Knowing that this is an array.
Just be if date equals, what's the name of the array?
This dot weather data dot forecast, and then we need I, right? That's the current one we're in.
Yeah.
Dot date. So as we loop through this would be index 0. Does the date match? Then it goes to index 1. Does the date match? And then it would be yes if we passed in today's date, right? 2021-06-29, and then it would say, okay, now what? I want to return the precip value. So how would I do that here?
Just return this dot weather data dot forecast precip.
Like that?
I think.
Does everyone agree with him? Is there something wrong here with what he's done? Estrella, what do you think? Is this good code or bad code?
Oh, we already have Never mind.
What? Are you confident in your answer, Andrew? Leah, what do you think? Is good code or bad code?
It looks good to me. I just want to see it.
Okay, looks good to you. She just wants to see it. That's the way I like to work. Let's run it and see what happens. All right, cool. So we're back here. Let's exit again. We've written all these excellent functions. What do we need to do? Var d rzl equals require. What do we call it? Index.js. Okay. And let's make our so require is giving us the class. We need to instance it now. So we'll say var d equals new drizzle. We'll put in Thompson, Georgia. All right. Let's try temp first. d.temp. 86. That's pretty good. Let's do d.city. Thompson, Georgia. That's pretty good. d.skytext. What does it look like outside? Sunny. Let's try d.precip. That's undefined. What do we forget to do here? Leah said the code is pretty good. What did we do wrong right here?
Can you show it again?
Yeah. d.precip, when I run it, it gives undefined. And here's the code here.
No,
to the
like
We didn't put in a date to
code.
match it.
Yeah, we're missing the argument, right? This needs a date. So let's put in, what's today's date? 2021, 06, 28. 29? Today's the 29th. 100% chance of rain today. We did it, right? And we can get the date if we were on the browser, right? With new date, right? And you can see there, right? So we can even just like split t, new date, dot toString, right? Okay, so we probably, we'd have to go look up all the methods site. There's like get years, right? Oh, gosh. I always have to look this up because I don't memorize the date objects functions. So let's just say JavaScript new date. Just look up all the constructor. Let's go to the first thing. See if we can find a quick example. Oh, that's a bad website. Doesn't tell us anything. Let's look here. W3 Schools, save us. Okay, perfect. To UTC string maybe? Is that the one we want? No, that gives us that full thing. Date string maybe? Nope, that gives us human readable words. ISO string? Okay, well that's close, right? We can split on T here. So let's do that. That was kind of the direction we were heading anyway. So let's just do to ISO string, right? And we'll do dot split, which is we can split on a string, right? So that'll give us 2021, right? That's our date format. Though it thinks remember when we were playing with this last time, it thinks we're in GMT, where it's 8 o'clock, right? So in England, it's tomorrow. So we'd have to fix that too, but that's how we can get a date in JavaScript that we can then pass to this precip function. So this is really close, right? We're like super good. We can delete some of our test code here, right? We don't need this to work. This function works. This function works. This function works. The temp works. We still have a problem with our, weather data might not be populated yet, but I think we can solve that next if you guys want. We can solve it a couple different ways, but I'd like to maybe try like the naive, stupid approach first, because that's, the most fun way maybe. Let's just say implements drizzle weather API to pull weather data for location. All And let's push this to GitHub. Push. Yes. Good. And if we go just verify on GitHub that our code is there, drizzle, other. Wait, what? What's our repository?
When you created it, you made it with an I.
Oh God, I hate myself. Why would I do this? Why would I do this to myself? All right, let's edit this. Oh my goodness, we did it everywhere. Let's see, changes. We have to go in here, right? No. Oh, settings. Let's change the repository name, rename. Now all of our code is broken. So let's dot exit, and we will say get remote, right? Get remote rm origin, get remote add origin, and now it has a different URL. Paste. Perfect, much better. All right, let's look at our package JSON because that's probably broken too, right? We never even put in a repository. So what is that syntax? I never remember. Let's just look at one of our other projects. New window, open, file, CBC 12, Node.js module, package JSON, Git. So like this. So let's just do, and it also had bugs and homepage. Let's copy that. Bugs and homepage. So we need to change this to drizzle weather, drizzle weather, drizzle. Okay. Cool. So now our package JSON is fixed. Let's check this in. Fixes our GitHub repo, and we will commit and push. Yes. So now if we reload this page, we should see, fixes our GitHub repo. So now everything is how it should have been if we had just started from GitHub in the first place, right? Like, this is why I kind of tell you, like, that's the easy way. We've had to go hunting around for, like, what do they call, in our package JSON, what do they call the, what are all these, what is the format for adding a repository? I always forget. Like, you're not going to be in here writing stuff in package JSON very often. This is almost always auto-generated. Okay, so we've got, it requires weather.js. It's an app that we've built some nice functionality into. Now we need to make it so that this is a web server, right? Because this website, right, drizzle, let's take all this stuff out, right? Oh, we load this page, this is a website, okay? But we have no way to fetch that information. So we're gonna have to use another module to get this information, right? We're gonna use the drizzle app to slurp in this data and then punch in, the city name, the fair, the 1% chance of rain, and the temperature. Okay. So let's make ourselves a new project. Okay, because this is now done and complete. Like, we made a module, we can reuse it. We could reuse it in other projects if we wanted, but we need a server. So let's make a server for this. And it's going to use the drizzle module that we built so that we can have that functionality. Cool. Make a new, let's do it from GitHub this time so that we don't cause ourselves headache. And we'll say drizzle server. Okay, I spelled everything correctly. The web server for drizzle. Public, add a git ignore, node, got a readme. Okay. So node is kind of wild in that we're gonna write a bunch of small little packages, and we're gonna use them and combine them in ways that is kind of counterintuitive at times. Other programming languages like PHP. Have any of you heard of any other types of web servers that are pretty common or pretty popular. Throw out any web server you may have heard of.
Like Azure.
Okay, Azure is a cloud hosting provider. That's like servers, like physical servers. Azure would be similar to like AWS. But in terms of like web servers, there's one that is far and away the most popular, and then there's like a distant second made by Microsoft. Do you have any ideas of what a web server would be? Okay. The most common is probably a web server called Apache. Have you guys ever heard the word Apache before? Apache is just a really simple program that, well, it's not simple, it's super complex. But what it does is it sits there, it listens for requests on port 80, and then if you say, hey, give me index.html, Apache is going to go find that file and send it back using HTTP. Microsoft has a web server called IIS, and that stands for Internet Information Server, and that's a competitor to Apache. Apache is Unix-based, IIS is Windows-based. So if you're running a Windows server, you're probably going to use IIS. If you're using Apache, you're going to use, if you're using Unix or Linux, you're probably going to use Apache. Now, traditionally, historically, web development, you'd run Apache, and then you would install some plugins that let you program in a programming language, like PHP or Perl or Python, so that Apache would say, hey, I had a request that is being handled by a a PHP program. I'm going to pass the request off to PHP. PHP is going to process it's going to run all the lines of code, and then send back to Apache, here's the HTML output. When we use Node, it's kind of a little bit of a different model in that while we still could use something like Apache, most of the time we're going to write our own web servers, and we'll use something like Express, or we can use one of the built-ins that we took a look at yesterday of the HTTP server. And so for this project, we'll probably have to use Express so that we can use cores, right? Because we want to make sure that we allow this Drizzle website to communicate with itself. But most of the time, when you buy a physical server and it's somewhere on the internet, that server already is allowed to talk to itself. And so you'd run your Node Express server on there, and all of your files would be on there. So all the content would already be in one place. But because we're doing this live server, we got to jump through a few extra hoops. Now we're going to talk about Express in great detail tomorrow and Thursday, because that's really like the main focus of this week, is now that we know kind of what node modules are, let's write a server with them. Okay? So let's just use, we did this yesterday. I don't remember if I still have our code available, but it's pretty simple, right? So that one's minimized. We made a GitHub Drizzle server. We need to copy this. We're going to create a node module. So let's go back and we'll say make dir Drizzle. Oop, I almost did it again. Drizzle server. Oh, we could have git cloned. Let's do that instead. rm Drizzle server. We'll do git clone and do shift insert so that we can get Drizzle server. Okay. Now if we go to Drizzle server, right, same rules apply as the other modules. We need to run npm init. It's going to ask us what is the name of this package. We're going to say Drizzle server. It's version 1. This is the Express web server for Drizzle. I put an E on the end. Okay, good. That's the Git address. Author Eric Harrison. Yes, this is the correct package JSON. Okay, so now we're in a new module. We got our module that lets us fetch the weather, and this is going to be our web server module. So, what are we going to do here? All right, let's open up Visual Studio Code. Let's open folder, and we're going to go into Drizzle server. Perfect. So, Node.js created this package JSON. We want to check that in first. So let's say includes package JSON. Right. Cancel. Click the plus first, then click the check mark, and push. Okay, we're good. So let's open up. All right, we need index.js. All right, so we're going to have use create a Drizzle class, create an Express class, right? So we need to make the web server. So it's and we want the web server to respond. Web server will listen for requests and return JSON data of weather. Okay. That's pretty much what we're doing at its core. So we want to make our drizzle class here. We already wrote this module. How am I gonna create this drizzle? What do we call it? Drizzle weather. If I wanted like const drizzle weather, I put in E's and I's. Gosh, why did we have to pick such a silly name? All right. What do I type next to make this available to us? How do I pull in a module in Node?
By using require.
Yep. Require, and what do we call it? Drizzle weather. Right? Now, if I was to run this right now, let's open up a terminal. New terminal. Let's change this to get bash. Delete this one. Great. If I run node index.js, this is going to give me an error, right? Cannot find it. What do we need to do? How do we make sure that this module is available? Go ahead, Andrew.
Do you need to add it as a dependency?
Yep. How do I do that?
You go to, or I guess you can do it right there. You can just do npm install, then just the drizzle. What do we call it?
Drizzle weather. So
drizzle weather, yeah.
Let's type npm install help first to see if it tells us. We need to do the username in GitHub / the name of the project, because we're using the GitHub version. We did not send our drizzle weather module to npm, so we can't just do npm install.
Gotcha.
The other thing we could do, right? It also says we can also install a folder, right? I like to do it this way because we already are storing it on GitHub, and we probably want to publish it to npm at some point in the future. But we could also just do npm install / drizzle weather. Right, this would also work. Oh, did we make a JSON position? So we must have messed up our code when we were fiddling with it. Oh yeah, we have an error in here. Yeah, we have an extra comma at the end. Okay, good. We need to fix that in version control as well. So fix broken package JSON. Click the plus sign, click the check mark, click push. Okay, but back to this one, right? If we do npm install drizzle weather, we can install this by folder or by GitHub repository or by npm package. But the problem with this is if we look at our package JSON now, it's saying the dependency is this file that exists. So if we try to install this on our server, this file is not going to exist anywhere. The server is going to go crazy. So it's better to give it a URL or someplace that it's accessible. So let's not do that. So let's uninstall that way. We'll do npm uninstall drizzle weather. Great. And then we'll do npm install CBC 12 instructor / drizzle weather. And now it's being installed from our GitHub. So we can use GitHub as kind of like our single point of what do we got here? We got some kind of error. Request has been deprecated. Name. What does all this mean? Operation not permitted. Rename drizzle server package JSON. What? Oh. Because we installed it the other way, because we installed a folder, it didn't know how to correctly uninstall it. So this has caused all kinds of problems for us. So let's just make this dependencies. Just do that. So I manually taking out a package JSON, and then package lock. Let's delete this completely. Okay, let's see if this will let us work now. Okay, good. So now it's correctly installed. So there was an error when we used it as a folder. npm got super confused and didn't know how to uninstall it correctly, and it left it in there. And then we tried to install the same version. Now there's a name conflict. So just be aware that like the reason that the package JSON is editable like this is that we can at any time like save ourselves from problems by going in here and like removing things that shouldn't be there. Okay. Anyway, all right. So we've got drizzle weather now. Now if we run node index.js, right, we shouldn't get that warning anymore, right? So it created that object or it created the class, and we are good, right? So probably what we want to do. So now we need to make web server. Now, one of the best web servers that you can do with Node is called Express, and we're going to dive into this super deeply tomorrow. We kind of looked at it a little bit yesterday, but let's go to npm just to show off how to use this, and it's called Express. So if we click on it, it's going to show you like with 4 lines of code, really, like we can use right. We're requiring Express, which gives us the class. Then we're saying the app, the web server itself, is a new. It doesn't use new for whatever reason. They just chose stylistically to have their object not have a new keyword. I don't know why. So you just call it by saying run the function, and then we set up our routes by saying app.get. You guys remember looking at this yesterday briefly? Okay, so we're going to use exactly this. Let's just copy this code in here because this is pretty good. All right, so we'll say boop. All right. Let me make this smaller. So now that our code is in here, right, we still need to install our module. And this is going to start listening on port 3000, which is kind of wild, but we'll go with it for now. And we know that in here, right, this is where the web server will listen for requests and send back weather data. Right, so right now it's going to say hello world. And that's probably our first thing to do, is to just make sure this is working. Right, so let's run it. Node index.js. It's going to tell us there's an error because we have not installed that module. So, Australia, how do I install a module?
Install, and then the name.
Yeah, and because Express is in npm, that's where we're looking at it from. We can just use the name. And so now, if we run this, it's going to give us. Yeah, it doesn't stop running because this is going to run forever because it's running to listen on this port. So this is how we use Node.js in like a server type of context. We're going to run a script, and that script is going to run all the time, and just every single request that comes through. So if I go to my local computer, localhost, port 3000, that is our server, Drizzle server responding back. If we change this to, hello from Drizzle, right? I have to stop this server and restart it for those changes to be available. And if I reload the page, now it says hello from Drizzle. Okay, so we have a web server, it's working, but we need to not just send text back, we need to send back JSON that will come from our Drizzle weather information, right? Everybody following along? All right. So let's not do res.send. We know we can do that. First, we need to. We really need to like send back a different type, right? By default, the web server is sending back text HTML. That's the encoding type of the content. We probably want to send like application JSON. So let's look at documentation here to see if there's a simple way to let's go to their homepage. They probably got really good guide. Maybe we'll say like JSON. Oh, so we can just do res.json and it will automatically do it for us. So let's try that. Where am I at here? Oh, that's our other one. So instead of res.send, we can use res.json, and let's just put in something in here that says like success true, and we'll maybe say like Drizzle 1.0, something like that, just to see if we are actually sending JSON back. And let's stop our server and restart it. Let's reload the page. Okay, so it is sending JSON. That's pretty cool. So we could, using XML HTTP request on this page, when this page loads, we can send an XML HTTP request to this page and fetch all those weather information that we need. So it is also pointing out that, like, we probably just want to have this page make one request. Instead of calling 5 different functions, we probably want to change our module to give us like a package of those information. Right? City, sky text, precipitation, temperature. Does that make more sense? Rather than making 4 calls, but I mean, we could, right? We can come in here and say, if we just call nothing, it's going to send back this. If we just do like app.get temp function rec res, and we'll say res.json temp is 79. Okay. So all those different routes that we wanted, right? App.get, what was it? Precip function rec res.json precip 100. I think that's a pretty good example, right? So if I run this server now and I come over here, if I put in just the slash, it's doing that first get. If I put in /temp, right, it's going to send back that JSON. So we could do this correctly, like exactly like this. We could say, let's do 50 different ways to do this. But we probably let's start it this way and just see where we go from this. Because the thing that jumps out to my mind as a software engineer is I probably only want to make one request. So I'd want to go and change my node module. I still probably want those functions. Those are pretty cool. We wrote those functions. We might as well use them. But I want to just return, like, get weather data or something like that will send me back all 4 of those things in one object. Okay. So we're at this point. We're going to keep opening the wrong one. We're going to keep opening up. Yeah, good. Let's make this a little bit smaller. Yeah, perfect. All right. So we need to find out in Express. We not only want to put in the temp like this. We probably need to have some query parameters like zip code, or like location equals Thompson, Georgia, right? So that our drizzle mechanism can know that we are where we're at, right? We got to fetch that weather data. We need to be able to pass our location, and we're going to have to do that in XML HTTP request on our actual website when we're done. But we have to have the server understand what we're doing. So how can we do that in Express? Let's just see query params. Yeah, perfect. So we have the rec object. We haven't done anything with it. This rec object, we just console.log here. Right? What did we do? Temp console.log rec. Let's cancel our server and restart it. If I reload this page, we can see that this is an object that has a whole bunch of information about me, about my request. Right? The rec object is our request. And it has a query object that if we stop the server and restart it, right? This is an object that is going to have those query parameters in it. So I want rec.query.location on each of these things, right? So if I wanted to, we know we need to fetch current temp from drizzle weather, and we know we need to pass in a location, and that location is rec.query location. So let's try that now and see what happens. Okay, we know that drizzle weather is going to return just the value. Right, that was how we wrote it. You guys remember this? So when we run, so we need to. We've created our class. Let's just write temp first. So let's say create instance of our weather object, and we'll say var. Let's do let d equals new drizzle weather, and we're going to pass in whatever is in that rec.query.location parameter. Okay, so when a request comes in and it has this information, we're going to create a new instance of our thing, which is going to go out and fetch all that weather data. Yep. So d.getTemp, or what was it? GetTemp or dTemp, right? dTemp is going to return back the current temperature in Thompson, Georgia. So I can put this right in here and say res.json dTemp. Now this is going to break because we have not truly solved asynchronicity, right? This is still fetching our information by the time we're trying to send it back. So we're going to have to do something clever to solve that. But in theory, right, send back a JSON object with our current temp. And this is really the flow of what we're trying to do. And if we go ahead, Astrea.
Would this be one of those instances where you would use a catch error?
If we wanted to do try and catch, yeah, but I don't think this is even going to throw an error. It's just going to return null, right? So like if I run this here, let's console.log this as well. Console.log try to fetch temp of, and we'll maybe just include our rec.query.location, right? And then we'll say console.log d.temp, just so we can see what's coming back. And we'll kill our server, restart it, and let's just reload this page. Yeah, and so there you go. It's going to say cannot read property temperature of undefined. Yeah, so we could have done a catch error, right? This is temperature doesn't, that object we're looking at doesn't exist yet. So we could do this, right? Try catch e console.warn the temperature object does not exist, right? It's kind of the same thing it's already doing. So, but we're going to put the thing we're actually trying inside a try block so that it doesn't break our server. So we run this now. No, it's still, maybe we put, maybe type error. No, that doesn't work. That's Java. Oh, but it is, yeah, so it is, it did run that, right? So it did tell us the temperature object didn't exist. So the catch block did run. We're just not actually catching this error. So we'd have to look and see how to do that correctly. But if we wanted to do something different, how do we suppress the error? I don't know. But either way, this definitely points out that we've got some problems, right? And we know what the problem is because we already took a to-do of this, right? We know this is creating the object, it's doing the query, but that query hasn't returned yet. So we probably need to, we were talking about like, what is the difference between callbacks and promises? This is a callback. It's saying when we get this information, it's going to try and run this function. So we need to have something that blocks the response until this has had a chance to run. And then we're going to run res.json, right? So we probably need to modify our drizzle weather client to know that it works within Express. So we probably need to add a second parameter and say res, maybe, or let's put it at the end. Or maybe we put it in this. No. I'll have to think about it. There's a couple ways to go about this, and they're all kind of weird. Let's see. Maybe Express gives us some examples of things we can do. Let's see. Get something asynchronous. Okay, so here's a good example. So we're doing something synchronously, then which makes promises. Let's see. Let's actually search Google. Maybe that's a better way to do it. Express.js handling asynchronous requests. Oh, we can use await, right? So we could say async. Cool. All right, neat. Let's try this. All right, so we're gonna experiment here live. So we're gonna use async there, and we'll say await here. It's giving us some kind of show fixes. Remove unnecessary await. Let's take this out. Let's see if we put it down in here. Let's take this out, and let's just say console.log await d.temp. Okay. So let's stop our server. Let's run this again. Okay, we got some other errors here. Let's see if this tells us anything. Trying to fetch weather of temp. Unhandled promise rejection. Type error. Cannot read property temperature undefined. Okay. So we'd have to convert all of our module into promises. It's a pain in the ass. Let's. All right. This is going to require some more research. And the research that we need to do, I'm trying to figure out, like, what's the best way to explain this to you in a way that won't break all the things we've been learning so far. So I'm going to take this as a homework assignment for myself to go and do some more digging to figure out how we're supposed to handle this in Express. Because most of the time when we use Express, we're using it to be very simple things. So I'm going to have to do a bit of digging to figure out, like, what is the best thing we should do rather than sitting here and trying for the next 30 minutes. But I think we're at a good stopping point today. We made a module. The module kind of works. It just does not work with our web server. And when we come back tomorrow, we're going to hopefully, tomorrow was set up to be an Express day anyway, so hopefully we'll be able to figure out a way to, at the beginning of class, solve this issue for ourselves and explain it in a way that it makes sense to you for future module development, because you're always going to be doing things that require us to wait for some response elsewhere. So we could have filled our, the thing that is jumping to mind is I could have filled our drizzle weather app with callbacks so that it says when this happens, then return information back to the thing. But then we got spaghetti code that gets pretty messy, and then our drizzle weather needs to know that it could be used in an Express product. I think there's probably a better way to do this, but I'm gonna have to do a bit of digging. And I don't want to make you sit here for 20 minutes while I figure this out. So, what questions do we have? What would we like to